Yeah, it absolutely did. And I think that the timing of it is probably the biggest shock of all. It seems a really big U-turn in such a short space of time. I think longer term, and I've said this before in bits that I've been, kind of looking at this sort of stuff. I think we probably expected the play to be made by the PIF at some point, but it certainly seems like it's come around a lot quicker. And especially with you know, the stuff that's gone before and the big fallouts and the legal disputes and everything. I don't think anybody expected this. Certainly, right now, it feels like such a seismic moment. Certainly in the world of golf, for sure. Probably the biggest change in golf for a number of years, maybe the biggest change ever. Because if you look, really, the PGA has had almost monopoly control over that sport, and this is a really big shake-up of that, and a big shift. But again, it's part of a much bigger picture. So, we've also seen news this week that the PIF have privatised four of the biggest football clubs in Saudi Arabia, with plans to expand the football league in Saudi Arabia and make it a top 10 football league in the world. So it is pretty seismic for golf. It's probably the biggest thing we've seen in golf to date, arguably. But there will be other ripple effects now across other sports as well. And as I said, it's part of a much bigger picture. You look at the product as a whole as well, and I think this was always going to come to a point, because what neither side really standed to benefit from was having a split whereby some of the best players in the world were playing over here and some were playing over there, and they were banned from this competition or this competition. That doesn't work for the sport in the long term. So there was arguably going to be a point where this was going to come to a head. There could have been a scenario, certainly, where the two, if you look at the PGA and LIV, I know there's the DP World Tour involved as well, but there could have been a situation where they kind of coalesced and came closer together. But I don't think anybody still saw the merger this soon. But the players are probably a big part of that, because as a sport and as a kind of product to sell commercially, what you don't want is kind of split superstars all over the place. You need them all in one place to be able to generate the best product. The situation for the sport in terms of having split in player factions and which superstars, which mega talents can play in this competition and can't play in this one, on no level is that good for the overall sport. And if you're looking at the sport to grow, and we've mentioned some of the things around what LIV have been involved with around some of the shorter formats, making golf more of an entertainment spectacle, trying to attract a different, maybe younger audience, let's say, and building that digital kind of profile as well. A lot of other sports are looking to do that. That's the kind of next wave of travel. And I think the PGA as well are aware of that and realise that. And actually, as I said before, we perhaps didn't expect this kind of ultimate merger so quickly. But there was a scenario on the table where the two could coalesce and coexist and actually support each other and learn a little bit from each other as well. And when you look at that, as you say, from an overall product point of view, a lot of this will naturally be about protecting the position of golf in the future. And that might not be in everyone's best taste right now, but that'll certainly be the narrative that comes from this. Oh, absolutely. From that side of things, it is a big win in that side for LIV and what they were trying to do and how they've kind of shaken the sport up a little bit. It's certainly a big positive for them in that regard. And also, as I say, there are some real positives then to take forward for the sport as well. The trick now is working together and activating some of those things and shifting golf on into the future from a sport perspective. We're basically looking at is these certain countries using sport as a way to legitimize themselves in the external world, essentially. And people will talk about some of the other issues alongside this around some of these countries, not just Saudi Arabia, but other countries that we've talked around some of the issues that are kind of, we know have been there in the background historically, but are now perhaps kind of using sport as a way to legitimize themselves on a world stage. And that's kind of where that term sports washing comes from. But I think, again, if you look at the other side of that and particularly what Saudi Arabia have done in recent years, is that there's a very bold strategy, which is the Vision 2030 of the country. And sport is a big part of that. And that's not just golf. We've seen that with football. We've seen that with bids to host major football events. We've seen that with athletics events taking place there. We've even seen the WWE hosting pay-per-view events in Saudi Arabia. So this is a big story, and it's a huge story for golf, but it's part of a much bigger picture. And I think, again, if people have not been kind of following that or aware of it, we're talking about golf here, but it's much bigger in terms of the sport in play that particularly Saudi Arabia and some of those other countries in the Middle East are making to make themselves a global sporting player in the future.